In this next part of the tutorial, we'll create a goal, we'll create a hazard, we'll create coins to collect, and we'll just make the environment look a little bit better. I'm going to start off by clicking 3 to go to the side view, tapping A until I've selected everything, and then you can see how my game plane is just a little bit below this green line. This is like the center of the universe. I made the game plane a little bit low, so G, Z, I'm going to just move everything in the world so that it's closer to the game plane. And then with everything still selected, Shift S, selection to grid. And that just snaps everything to a grid, and it just makes me a happier person. So, done that. Let's now click 7 to see up top. I'm going to click here in order to put my cursor near the front there, and we'll tab A to unselect everything. So add, I'm going to add a goal, and we're going to add a monkey, believe it or not. This is Blender 3D's mascot, Suzanne. I'm going to co-opt her and call her goal instead. In order to signal to the player that she is something interesting, we'll give her a nice green material. We'll make her bright so that she's emitting light. And we'll make her, click transparency, we'll make her partially transparent. You can click here and type 0.5. And in order for Blender 3D to be able to notice when something has collided with something else, we'll prep that by coming over here to our player. I'm going to add a game property, and I'm going to call it player. Okay, so just type player. You can ignore all those default settings. So from here, within our goal, I'm going to add a sensor, a collision sensor. And collision sensor is going to trigger whenever this object is colliding with something that has the property player, which I just gave to our player cube. And when that happens, we will play a sound, which I'll load from my computer. It's going to be the level completed sound effect. I'm going to play through to the end, and I'll connect this sensor to this actuator, and we'll see what happens. All right, so that worked. Nothing is listening for it right now, but in addition to playing the sound effect, I'm going to send a message, add actuator, message, and I'm going to just call it level complete. Again, nothing is listening for that now, but that will be coming up later. Okay, so now the next thing that we'll do is we'll add a hazard. Again, back to 7, moving the mouse wheel to adjust. Let's click the 3D cursor there, and we will add mesh. This one is going to be a cone. I'm going to drag the cone up so that it's just above the surface. I'm going to name this cone flame. We will give it a material that is nice and bright red. Make it red. We'll make it emit light. I'm going to make it partially transparent, so change that to a 0.75 alpha. And we're also going to turn off the shadows. Flames don't cast shadows, and they don't receive shadows. So that flame now will, look more like fire in this environment. And with that flame object selected, we're going to add a sensor, again, another collision sensor, prep it so that it responds to combining with something with the player property, and we will play a sizzle sound effect. And we will play it through to the end, and let me try to make it a little bit louder, maybe so that the volume is 2, which I believe is the maximum. And now when I play, okay, we got a sizzle. Now notice the cube is interacting with that cone as if it's a physical object. So let's go over here. I'm scrolling with the mouse wheel, get the physics tab, turn that to a ghost. And I'm also going to send the message hazard which will become important later when we deal with health. And also something that's fun, I'm going to add an always actuator and a different sound effect. This is just a loop of fire burning. So every time, well, as soon as that object is created, it's going to start playing a loop. It'll loop all the way through to the end. And if I click 3D sound, and again change the volume to 2, what that does is, whoops, turn that back there. What that does is Blender 3D, a little crackling sound effect. If you have headphones, Blender would indicate which side of the screen that sound effect is happening in. If you have multiple things in the environment and they all make their own little noises, it can really add to the gameplay. All right, so that's optional, but certainly fun. Okay, so the next thing that we'll do is we will, again, go back to the top view. I'm just going to adjust it, and I'm going to add in front of my player a coin. I'm going to add a mesh. It's going to be a cylinder. I'm going to drag this item up here. I'm going to tap S, and then Z for scaling on the Z-axis, 0.1, and then R, rotate on the X-axis, type X, 90. And I'm also going to scale it. That coin's a little bit too big, so we'll do S, scroll it down a little bit, maybe put it a little bit closer to the ground, and now this is important. I'm going to go to Object, Apply, Rotation and Scale. When this cylinder was first created, it was oriented vertically and it was a lot thicker. I made some changes to it, but now I'm telling the game world that's going to be the default state from now on. It's important for reasons that are probably too boring for me to explain. Let's go over here to create a new material. New material, again, with this object selected, we'll give it a nice gold kind of color. The reflections will be a little bit reddish gold. I'm going to make it glow just a little bit, so it'll emit 0.1 light. And I'm also going to come up here to the Object tab, and I'm going to change the name from cylinder to coin. And when this coin collides with the player, collision sensor, player, what we'll do is we will play a coin collected sound, and we'll see how that works. Okay? But notice we run into it like it's like a brick wall. So just like the flame, let's come over and make that a ghost. And now we'll go through it, and whoops, did you hear that? How that kind of popped? Let's make that play end, and that way it'll play through the whole song. Even though the player is no longer touching the coin, it'll play that whole sound effect. Okay, now what we really want to do is for that coin to disappear after we've collected it. And there's an actuator for that. We'll add the actuator end object, edit object rather, and we'll change that to end object, and it will end this particular object. So when we hit P play, we drive through it and it disappears. Now, did you notice the sound effect didn't play? That's because the sound is coming from this object, and we killed the object before the sound could play. So there are a couple things that we can do to fix that. What I'm going to do, however, is I'm going to remove the sound from that object for now, and I'm going to hit Shift D, and then I'm going to drag that, and I've just made a copy. I'm going to call this copy coin collected. And coin collected is it has all the same logic bricks as the previous one, but I don't want to make this one sense collision. Instead, what I'm going to do is, as soon as this object is created, I'm going to So I'm going to delete both of these things. We'll start over from scratch. What the heck? We'll just start over from scratch like that. Okay, so start there. Over here, I've deleted all the logic bricks from this coin. This one I'm going to say, always add the actuator sound. I want to play the sound that we already loaded, coin get. And we're going to play it through till the end. So if I hit P, that sound is now coming from this particular coin. And what we'll do is we will, upon collision, instead of playing the sound from this coin, and this is kind of complex, but you'll see why it's in the long run it's easier. It's object-oriented thinking. We're going to create a copy of the object coin collected every time a copy of the object coin gets destroyed. The object coin collected will play a sound, and then we'll set things up so that after a few logic ticks, after a half second or so, the copy of coin collected that this guy spawns will delete itself. And that actually will solve the problem that we just had earlier. So I'm going to add the actuator edit object. I'm going to add object coin collected. We're going to set the time for 30 logic ticks, which is about half a second. You can adjust the speed in Blender for logic ticks, but a logic tick is about half a second. Or rather, 30 logic ticks is about half a second. So I'm going to connect these two items so that in addition to ending this coin, it will also spawn the new one, coin collected. Now, in order for that to work, I'll click P. We hear that. The coin disappears. Nothing seems to happen, though. Well, that's because when this guy is spawning a new object, that new object cannot be visible in the game world, or else the spawn attempt will fail. So I can hide this object from this game world by sending it to another layer. These are all layers that can be rendered separately and turned on and off. I'm going to hit with the coin collected selected, M, I'm going to move it to a new layer. And if I click here on this little button, this is the sort of alternate universe where the copy that I just created is banished. I can display both universes at once by holding down Shift and selecting both of these items. So, for now these guys are sharing a universe and we can interact with them easily. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to double check, okay, so collision with the player, create this object. This object then will play this sound effect, and I'm also going to make this object, we'll just give it a little bit of visual feedback. We'll make it fly up a little bit. So I'm going to add simple motion on the Z-scale 0.05. And that will just cause this object to fly up. We'll test it. And it didn't work. And why didn't it work? Because I put that under rotation, not under location. All right. So I made it rotate a little bit. What I want to do instead is have it fly up. So that'll be here under, if I zoom in a little bit so you can see a little bit better. So under location, Z-axis, that should fly up. Now I'll try it again. There we go. So it flies up. So now we've got that flying up action that's working. I'm going to select, just going to click right here on this visible layer. There we go. So now here, all right, that seems to work. And now one more thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to add some animation to this coin. Down here, this timeline, I'm going to make sure that I'm at level 1 or at frame 1. I'm going to, for the ending, I'm going to end it at frame 20. I'm going to make a very brief, very simple 20 frame animation. So, I'm going to insert a keyframe, and the frame that I'm focusing on, or the change that I'm focusing on, is rotation. So at frame 1, I've kind of created a bookmark that says this is frame 1 of the animation. I'm going to go over here to frame 6 and RZ90 and then I rotation. And so now we see a rotation happening here. This frame is going to be 11, RZ90, a little bit more. This is going to be 16, RZ90, and this is going to be, whoops, forgot to do that. Go back here to 11, RZ90, I rotation, there we go. Try this again. 16, RZ90, I rotation, and then 21, RZ90, I rotation. Okay, so now we can test that animation by clicking this play button, and that looks pretty good. Pause that, go back to the beginning. There, I'll send myself back to the beginning of frame 1. There we go, that's where we go back to the beginning. Okay, so now when I hit play, nothing happens because we have to tell the game engine to add that action to this coin in the following way. Always add this actuator action. We want to play in a loop that goes through the end. Select coin action. No, that's not what I want to collect there. From always to play, and then this is something I always forget. Also make sure to start at frame 1 and end at frame 20. If you don't do that, the animation won't play. So now when we click play, there we go, we have a spinning coin. The coin hops up. Notice how that coin is no longer spinning when it hops up. So let's go over to our copy in the alternate universe, and I'm going to do the same thing over here. We already have an always sensor. Add the actuator, action, loop, through to the end. We're going to add this coin action, which is the same spinning animation. Again, we start with frame 1, end with frame 20, and make sure to connect it there. Just test it. There we go. So now it is spinning as it's created, and we'll go back to that level. Okay, so now as it rises, it is animating appropriately, right? So, and just for a little bit of fun, I'm going to select all the vertices here in this cone. I'm going to select all the vertices. Yeah. I'm going to I shift right mouse near that apex in order to deselect it, so that now what's happening is all of the vertices at the bottom are selected. Over here under transform, I'm going to click randomize, and you're just going to jumble those vertices a little bit just to give us a little bit of unevenness. Drag that up a little bit, and now when we play, let's also, under always, we'll add an action. We will play, loop through the end. We'll add that same spinning action, and for fun, instead of starting at frame 1 and going to 20, we're going to start at frame 20 and go back to frame 1. And you can probably predict what's going to happen. Let's make sure to connect that so that, again, this is connected to the always controller. Now the flame is just spinning, and you get a little bit of, cheapo animation effect. All right, so let's see how that works. Okay, so we've got a world with a hazard, with a coin to collect. Let's see. Suzanne, the monkey, our goal, sends the message level complete. Our flame sends the message hazard. Coin, let's add to the collision actuator, or to the collision sensor, we're going to send the message score. And we got to connect that up here. like that. So it crosses that. If you don't like the crossing, you can kind of move those things around and set them up together. Right, so let's see how that works. Yeah, everything seems fine there. Okay, so now let's make the world a little bit more challenging. Let's select here. I'm going to add mesh cube, SZ point 1, I guess, S2. Just talking out loud to show you what I'm doing to make a little platform to jump on. And from the side, let's see how high this guy jumps. That might be just a little bit too high to land on safely, so let's see. Yeah, okay, we can land there. Now, so we've got the makings of a game where we can, I'm going to Alt-D and make a copy of this platform, and I'm just going to eyeball it. Let's put our goal up there. Let's put a coin there. We can Alt-D. I can put a copy of the coin floating here. And of course, we need to Alt-D and G, Y, add some more hazards. Alt-D, G, X. Oops. Alt-D, there we go. G, X. Alt-D, G, Y. Again, I'm going to select more than one. And so I'm selecting 4. I'm holding down the Shift button and clicking the mouse. G, X, center it with all those selected. Alt-D, G, Y. And you don't want to fall down there, do you? So let's see how this works. All those guys are all off-centered. How about I drag those guys over here? Again, I'm selecting each one of these by holding down the Shift button. There, dragging them that way. Doesn't have to be perfect. P to play, and I fell out of the world. So let's try that again. There we go, and there we go. All right, so now this platform and this green space look kind of bland. Let's try to liven that up a little bit. I'm going to select this, it just calls it cube. Let's call this platform. Okay. Call this guy platform. Whatever. See, these guys are all nicely named Flame. This guy is called Cube. Let's call him Player. We'll call Suzanne is already called Goal. Instead of Plane, let's call this Ground. If you only have a handful of objects in your game world, spending time naming every one is going to feel like a waste of time. But when you have hundreds of objects, it's really very useful to have them named meaningfully. Okay, so let's go here to the Materials tab. I'm going to create a new material. I'm going to then go to the Textures tab. I'm going to create a new texture to add that material. I'm going to open an image that I've already prepared, which is white marble tile texture. And you can see that's what it looks like there. It's not visible here yet. I'm going to tab into Edit. I'm going to type, make sure everything's selected. Type U, and then I'm going to reset the UV mapping, which is just simply a way to map this 2D shape onto this 3D object. And you can see that works just fine, but let's try to make this even better. If I scroll down here under Geometry, if I click this box under Normal, what that does is it tries to sort of make a fancier way of interacting with the lighting effects. You can see if I tab that on or off, you can see it's giving a little bit of texture, a little bit of detail. Here we go, with the sun shining on at that angle, you can see it looks very, very flat. Here there's an illusion of 3D. Let me change that effect to about a 0.5. I think it looks a little bit better that way. And because I had made a copy with Alt-D, this guy over here, was changed along with all the changes that I made here. Now let's click our ground. I'm going to go back to the Materials tab. We have this material here. Okay, so Texture, create a new texture. I'm going to open a texture that I've already prepared, which is green grass. I'll do U. Whoops. There we go. My problem was I was in object mode, and when I hit U, different things happened. I need to be in edit mode, U, and then reset. And now we can see the grass texture. That grass is kind of huge, so we need to adjust the size of it. There are a couple ways to do that, but here's one way you can do that. I'm going to put the mouse over here, drag on this corner to the left, and we create a new window. I'm going to go down here and turn that window into a UV image editor. And then I'm going to, from here, select the grass, and here, S for scale, 5. And what that does is it just kind of repeats that texture 5 times in the X and Y location, and it just scales it down so that it looks better. So that each individual blade of grass isn't gigantic in relationship to our character. And then, just as we did last time, let's go over here to normal, turn that geometry on, and you can see now we have the illusion of a very rough surface. 1 is way too high. Let's make that down just a 0.1. We really just want to give the slightest impression of a 3D surface. So again, I'm tabbing out of edit mode, back to object mode, P to play, and now you can see the way the light is interacting. It looks like the grass seems very shiny. So let's go back to, again, with the object mode, ground selected, go back to materials, and this is what specular does. Let's change the intensity of specular down quite a bit, and maybe instead of white, just make it a lighter green color, and I think that's a little bit more realistic for gameplay. Okay. And one last thing before this part of the video is over, I'm going to add a couple more motion controls to the player. We'll go here and we will, we already have the moving forward and mouse look rotation, but let's add keyboard, let's add a S key for moving backwards, close up those bricks, motion, and that will be location. Y will be minus 0.25. I think that'll work. Connect those over, and we'll also add some strafing. We'll add on the keyboard. We'll make, drag this up so I have a little bit more room. This one is going to be the A key, and that motion, add motion, that will be let's see. Well, that's the A is that way. That's the minus X axis. So that'll be, what do we have? Minus 0.02, minus 0.2. Yeah, minus 0.2. Drag that across. Another sensor, keyboard. This one is going to be D, and that one is going to be a motion sensor of 0.2, move across that way, and just so you can get a look at it, I will expand these guys. So these are the things that I added. I added the S, A, and D key, and that's what I created them to do, so let's see how that works. D key, S key, no, that's the S key, that's the A key, D key, and so we have strafe, and we can go forward. And so you have a little bit more control over how you move in the world, and there, I just fell off the level again. All right. This is why I was saying earlier, it actually makes a lot of sense for you to name your sensors, because if you have all this stuff happening here, when you have them all expanded like this, it's really hard to see. So if you name it meaningfully, that's the S key, that's the A key, and that's the D key. If you name them meaningfully, this is back. If you want to debug it later, say A would be left, strafe. It's a heck of a lot easier. Which one is this? This is jump. This is forward. Okay. All right. So that is the end of section 2.